What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John, and with me, as always, is Daniel Terry. How are you doing? These really interesting times since the last time we talked.
I'm doing all right. I know there's a lot of people out there that are not doing all right, and that doesn't make me feel good for sure.
Yeah. As of when we're recording this, we, like everybody, have basically watched the world, in some instances, come together against racism and police brutality and injustices across the world. And in other instances, we've seen basically the worst of our societies looting and causing a lot of problems. It's been wild. The other day when that was happening in my city in Grand Rapids, I was probably 5 minutes away from all the riots and shit that were happening in our town and just watching, cop cars getting burned and buildings being looted and all that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of wild to see something like that happening in real time and know that it's not too far from your home. And I know, as we've seen the stats happening, I think this is the biggest civil rights movement we've seen in our history as the U.S. All 50 states were involved in it, as well as I think I saw 18 countries as well. So yeah. Obviously this is a global issue, and it's also kind of seeped into our realm of rock and metal and hardcore and so forth. I didn't know if I was going to say this. We were supposed to have Corey from Norma Jean on, whether to do another podcast basically to catch up since All Hail had come out, which maybe the title is a little bit egregious at this point, looking back. Or, doing basically an Instagram Live like we've been doing lately. And I guess I actually personally didn't see it when it happened. I sent him a text being like, yo, I'm sorry I haven't, got back to you in the last couple of days. Been really busy. Let me know what your next week or two looks like, and we'll set something up. And then he was like, oh, dude, I guess you didn't see I got canceled.
Oh, yeah.
And so this whole thing, not to be a bummer or not to be, like everybody else who's kind of like, oh, here's how you should think or feel, or, woe is us or whatever. But just feel like, saying nothing doesn't help. That we should talk about it, that, this is how anything gets better. You kind of talk your way through problems. Violence isn't the answer, never has been. And hopefully things will kind of get resolved. But it's been a fucking week.
Yeah, it's hard. I think, I don't know, this thing with Corey, obviously was not, advantageous to anybody involved, and it's a bummer for me. It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of that band and that dude. But I remember texting you, John, earlier this week. I was like, well, I don't know how he's going to get out of this one. He's said some things in the past that have been very inflammatory and have caused similar reactions. But this was kind of the cherry on top of the cake, so to speak. And there's an apology for it. You could take that however you want to take that. I'm not here to make a stance on it on this podcast. Really. Well, no, screw it. I will make a bit of a stance. Dude really should have used his brain before just blowing off. And I know it's hard because a lot of us use social media as an outlet for our feelings and things like that. His explanation kind of makes sense, but if you go back and look at dude's Twitter history, he's he's not exactly the Donald Trump of hardcore, but he says things, people get upset, and he's gotten away with it for a long time, and I think people just got fed up with it. And I totally understand why everybody's mad, and it's definitely hard to stand up and be a fan after something like that, because it's like, dude, this is not the time to be throwing that kind of stuff up there. So not a great move, Corey.
I had made the comment to you that as I was watching the riots happen, outside with my wife and a friend of ours who happened to be a woman as well. And that's important because as we're watching the riots, the two field reporters were two women. And I made the comment that I thought it was kind of fucked up that you had two kind of larger fellas in the studio, and then you have these two kind of smaller women out, where there's tear gas, rubber bullets, people breaking shit, burning cars, a lot of danger, basically. That it didn't seem like they should be there. It should have been flipped. And, my wife and our friend agreed. They kind of laughed about it, like, yeah, that is kind of fucked up. And I got ready because I was already in just an embroiled posting mode, basically of just like things that I was noticing, things that were kind of pissing me off. And just kind of, I'm not a very political person. Typically, I kind of keep those thoughts to myself. But it's kind of hard when you're literally seeing everything come to a head and you're just, a rush of emotions is kind of overtaking you. And then it's like, well, this isn't necessarily about politics. This is about human rights. And this is about things that should be inherently agreed upon, regardless of where you land on most of these things. And I almost sent out the thing like that comment. And then I realized before I sent it out, I had it mostly written up and I was about ready to hit like post. And then I was like, shit, someone's probably going to read this and be like, what, you're saying like women can't handle themselves in a riot? You're saying that they should be tucked away because they're fragile? And then I realized like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But I realized that my words could, because they're just words on a screen, that they could be construed a completely different way than how I intended them to. And in light of what was happening, that comment and that thought isn't going to help anything. So I stopped, I deleted it, and I just let it be. And it was just a comment between my wife and our friend. And, now whoever listens to this, so I might catch the shit that I didn't initially for posting it. But the point of it is stronger head prevailed. I realized that what I was saying could be taken poorly. And then all I'm going to do is basically be backtracking the whole time and be like, well, that's not what I meant, and this, that, and the other. And it's like, it's just easier sometimes instead of putting yourself in that situation just to realize like no good is going to come of this. So just stop. And I think that's kind of the thing that a lot of us don't stop to do, is to think like, there's my intention, but there's how this could come across because no one can hear the tone of my voice or hear me maybe explain this a little bit better than I am in a quick caption or post to garner some sort of attention.
Yeah, I mean, and I've had kind of the same struggle in that, I've been hemming and hawing about what to say in regards to all of this. And unfortunately, I've just come to the conclusion that, I don't feel like I represent the people that need to be represented very well, I guess, if that makes sense. And then I'm afraid that if I do say something that maybe there just wouldn't have been as much thought into it. And I also don't want to come across as the kind of person that's just posting something because I have to, but I'm posting it because
it's sincere.
Because and it's not that I'm insincere, but I don't take my silence as ignorance. Take my silence as eventually I will say something, but I want it to actually mean something.
Right. There's not really a great segue to talk about who's on the show. It is Brian of Currents, their vocalist. Their new record, The Way It Ends, is out now as of when you're hearing this. It came out this past Friday via Sharp Tone Records. I really enjoyed this record. Currents is kind of an up-and-coming band. Some of you may not be aware who they are. A lot of times, I think I said to the publicist, I've seen the name, don't really know much about them. They are one of those bands that is on a lot of the great tours that have been going around the last handful of years, but, they're usually kind of tucked away first or second of 4 or 5 on these package tours. And, so in digging and checking them out and kind of going back and doing my due diligence, it was kind of cool. It felt like a little bit like a discography discussion of sorts where, I'm hearing the current thing first, no pun intended, and then going backwards and I'm hearing the growth and the maturity of a band who's kind of coming into their own right now. And it almost seems like now is the time to kind of get into Currents if you're not already aware who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, their newer stuff slams much. I don't know. I almost said much more than the old. It's not like that their older material wasn't good, but I do see the growth. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Almost this completely backs up what I was saying earlier. I'll start to say something and then realize that it wasn't the best way to say it.
Right. All that aside, we've kind of gone on quite a bit here in the intro, so let's get into my conversation with Brian of Currents, and we'll talk to you all afterwards. Have the pleasure of talking to Brian of Currents, whose upcoming album, The Way It Ends, comes out June 5th via Sharptone Records. How are you doing today?
Yeah, we've been moving along. We're supposed to be leaving for a tour in a few days, but unfortunately that's been canceled because of everything going on. It's for the better for sure, but it's still.
Yeah, I want to say, first off, congrats. The success of A Flag to Wave just seems like everyone, all your fans are just eating this song up, with the video sitting at just under 100,000 views as of when we're talking right now, and it's been out for just about 2 weeks, I think. How does it feel to see another new single just reacting so well out the gate?
It's been awesome. We're really excited to put this one out because, just when we were putting the song together and listening to mixes and stuff, this was always kind of one of my favorite tracks. There's and it's just a lot of fun. I'm excited to play it live at some point. It's gonna be sweet.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I know we're in the age now where basically the rollout for a record is, kind of expansive compared to how it used to be, when I was coming up, and it's here's your one song to get you excited about a record. Hope you like it enough to buy it. Whereas now, you're kind of doing the lead-off single, in some instances, 3-4 months away from the record dropping, and then just kind of slowly releasing content until the record's coming out. So, given how expansive your band's sound is, how hard was it for you to plan which, song was going to be the first sampling of this new record, and then subsequently the songs to follow it?
It was kind of a slow decision because we had kind of been sitting on the record for a little while, just because the mixing process took a long time, and then we wanted to kind of get 100% before we really kind of went anywhere and released anything. But I think it was kind of a joint decision between everyone, the band and our team and everything, was let's put out a really heavy guy first. Let's get that right out of the gate, you guys. It's a lot of it was kind of we had some heavy tours planned during that time, and it worked well to come in swinging with a really heavy song, but it was also just kind of a thing of let's get people going in a live setting. Let's play something that is just going to drop people's jaws when they hear it live, and that was Poverty of Self. We decided it just that ending breakdown, the crazy blast beats. There's not a single note, singing note in the whole song, so it was kind of for the situation that we're in.
Yeah, it was interesting in listening to this record. I kind of, when we get these records, sometimes, it's just a link. You can't really repeat anything, or if something catches you, it's a little bit harder to just kind of go back or, play the one song over and over. So, the kind of thing I enjoy about it is listening to a record the way I think you're supposed to, which is you put it on, you sit there with it, and when it's done, you either start it over again or whatever. And something I kind of noticed in listening to this record a couple of times over the last few days of having it is just, how well it really does flow. And I think a lot of it is partially to do with, some of the textures you're using with, the synths and the, keys and stuff that you're kind of incorporating on this record. So I kind of wanted to know a little bit more of how much attention did you guys pay to the track listing on this? And do you feel that, some of these elements that you're adding add to a more of a cinematic feel to it where, there's constant movement is kind of the only way I could kind of articulate it as best as I could, is that it just feels like it's moving you somewhere throughout the entirety of listening to the record?
Yeah, I think a big part of how people perceive an album is in its arrangement, how the track listing plays out. So I'm glad you kind of asked about it, because that's always kind of an important thing for us. We'll sit there and we have all these songs, and you work on it for, X amount of time, where now you're still kind of trying to figure out the real identities of these tracks and where they're going to kind of fall on the record. And maybe you kind of have an idea when you're sitting there writing it and tearing the songs apart, but once you're getting mixes back, that's kind of when we'll take it and listen to it in different orders and try to give it a little bit. And what we did on The Place I Feel Safest that I wanted to with this record was we decided we would kind of have the a kind of a soft intro into some of the heavier, more bombastic kind of songs, and then mellow out toward the middle, and then just come back in the end with some more beat.
Sorry, you kind of cut off there just at the end. What was that?
Oh, it's just the idea being we have like kind of a rise and then a fall and then a rising back up, so to speak.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I think in listening to the last couple of records and EPs and so forth you put out, there seems to be an obvious growth with each release. And, even this sounds like a backhanded compliment, so I hope you don't take it as such. But with the addition of stronger songwriting on this record, as you've kind of incorporated more elements to what you're doing, what is something maybe that you would like to bring into the band sound that, you maybe haven't yet, or you're starting to kind of put the foundation of figuring out how to incorporate it into your sound, but really maybe will expand upon it as you're starting to write newer material?
I think it's a lot of it. So some of these more outside elements are the brainchild of Chris. So Chris, our guitar player, is like the main instrumental composer for the band. Like he'll basically bang out an instrumental and send it to me, and then I'll kind of work on the vocal patterns and the lyrics and everything, and then we'll send stuff back and forth until we're both. A lot of the more like electronic elements that have been incorporated into the band are of his design, like things that he's trying to experiment with. He's always working on like new sounds and always working on new ways to, like add some flavor to the music. And so I'm kind of curious to see where he goes from this point. I think he's been experimenting more with different kind of guitar sounds, and I think he's just trying to come up with things that are different than what everyone else is bringing to the table. So I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm pretty curious to see where it goes from here.
Kind of adversely, when you're, as a lyricist and the vocalist of the band who kind of has to find melodies and so forth in the music, do you find it a little bit harder to maybe kind of stretch your, I don't want to say your vocal capabilities, but maybe kind of stretch what you would be used to doing when you're kind of adding more emphasis on melody and structure? And maybe there's a situation where you're finding that less is more, actually, where you want the music to kind of breathe more and not do something over it. Do you find newer challenges in kind of writing as you're progressing the sound?
That's a battle too, for sure. It used to be, there's a lot to that, because, and Chris will admit to this, he doesn't, for a while, he used to not really write songs with a vocalist in mind. It would just be like a structured piece of music, but it would be like, well, you could put vocals here, or you could put them here, or here, or here, or here. And it would just be, pretty much everywhere in the song. And so now we have a song that has vocals on every piece, like the song to really like breathe, or for me to breathe, but it's something that we are conscious of, and it's something that we've been working on, and we're trying to find those places where the song can breathe and have its own moment without vocals or anything on it. And I feel like I've grown a little bit as far as writing melodies and trying to do things that complement the songs instead of just compete with them and just shriek on top of them, because then that gets irritating for a listener, and it gets to be excessive. It can like wear you out on a song or a record, when normally you would be able to just kind of sit there and vibe to it. You feel like things are competing and clashing, and it gets too overwhelming. So that's definitely something that we're trying to be mindful of, especially in the future going.
Yeah, I speaking kind of the future, looking at the band's discography, it seems like you guys release music pretty quickly over the last few years. The place I feel the safest followed quickly by I Like the Devil, an EP. I think there was like maybe a year in between that. And I know it's just an EP, but I mean, that's still getting in, writing a couple of songs, getting to a studio, doing it. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that go into having to create something that you're then able to release in a timely manner. And, now with this new record coming out, I kind of wonder, do you guys just constantly write, or are you just able to get hyper-focused when you know you need to write and bang it out really quickly?
It depends. And I feel like we'll know more once we do the process more, but it's kind of varied every time. With Place I Feel Safest, it was, we had almost seemingly infinite time to like get things going. Like, we knew we had to have a record ready to go, but we wrote it over the course of like well over a year. Some of the songs on Place I Feel Safest were like 2 years old before they even, were recorded in a studio, let alone released out to like people. So it was, there was less pressure. It was more just make it good. It doesn't matter. Like, we'll take our time with it. And it felt there were eyes on us, and we felt like it was, we had to get it done. Not it still came out very naturally, and I think it turned out super well. But there was definitely it felt like a pressure on this one of like, we have to make something, and let's get it done because we want it and we feel like other people want it. And so it was kind of a thing of, all right, we have to hyper focus here and try not to think about it too much and just make something that we think is cool and fine tune it later, once we get into like the final stages.
Right. Something we kind of focused on this podcast is kind of the ever-changing music industry and the landscape of how things are released, how fast everyone is putting something out or creating content to keep fans engaged in the interim of putting out another record or whatever. Do you feel that this kind of formula you seem to have fallen into of, a record and then an EP or a single or whatever, do you feel that this gives fans something new more frequently that allows you to keep their attention in kind of the otherwise ADD nature of the world we live in, as well as allowing you to kind of be a bit more experimental and not having it come across so drastically as, 3 years ago they put out a record and then I don't know where this sound came from, but like you're able to kind of slowly introduce these new elements to the fans as well?
Yeah, well, I feel like you adjust to what you need, right? Like, we were in a situation where, we had this EP, I Let the Devil In, right? It was a short EP. It was, I think, it was like 4 or 5 songs. And
right.
We put that out after The Place I Feel Safest was released. And so I think it was kind of a thing of, we felt we needed to release music at that time, and we were ready to release music, but just not a full record. We were like, people are interested. People know who we are now. Let's capitalize on that, get these songs out there because we think that they're really cool and we think that they would add value to people and that it would do well for us to get music out to everybody while everyone is paying attention. And I think that was the best choice that could have been made. And it fit everyone's needs, and it was a win-win for everybody. And so I think you just kind of take it based on your needs and your priorities. Like, after this record, who's to say when we're going to go into the studio again, or when we're going to release music again, or start seriously writing? We're always writing, but it's just one of those things where this is what we're doing now, and we determine our needs, at a later time once it becomes more clear. But I feel like our whole experience in this world has kind of just been going with the flow of things and adjusting to what is best for the band.
Right. Yeah, it's just been kind of interesting. Like, I think the first time I really ever noticed a band kind of adopting that formula was The Used. They did a really good job of, they put out their first record, then they have the Maybe Memories DVD, which had, some extra songs on it, in B-sides and so forth. Then, they put out In Love and Death. Then they put out another, DVD with some B-sides and so forth. Like, they always kind of seem to have that thing to tide fans over just when maybe, you're like, oh yeah, I don't have anything new by this band, or maybe I'm forgetting about them now in favor of something else. It's like they constantly give you something to keep you coming back to them and keep them in direct line of sight of their fans. And I think that's really interesting, and I feel like that's kind of where the industry goes now, because you're starting to see people favor more singles and, more so in, I would say, like the hip-hop industry, mixtapes and so forth, where it's just, let's just churn out a song. And I know it's a little bit harder when you're not just outsourcing your material, your music and so forth, but it is one of those things where it just kind of makes me wonder if eventually we'll start seeing rock and metal kind of following that trend, where it's like, yeah, I mean, Bring Me's kind of doing it, but, doing the thing where it's like, people aren't listening to full records typically, so let's try to capitalize on dropping something and maintain our touring business, which is where we as the individuals in the band stand to make the most money. And it just kind of seems like that's sort of maybe where the industry's going, but I just don't know if like bands are kind of thinking in that way as well to kind of get ahead of a potential trend or a change in how they have to go about things.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because I feel like releasing music a lot of times will coincide with tours. Like, for example, we had Second Skin and we had Poverty of Self, right? And those songs, so Poverty of Self, we released right before a tour with August Burns Red. And then Second Skin, we released right before a tour with Silent Planet. And so it's like you can kind of a whole record to play with. And we didn't announce the record until we had a flag to wave. And that was kind of the plan, was like, we're gonna lead with one of our strong singles when we go to release the album, but we can put songs out to tide people over and to generate excitement for us playing a new song live on a tour. You know, like it works out. It's like, here, you come to this and staying busy, and if you come and see us, you get to hear this song live before other people, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. You're almost seeing, at least I'm noticing this, it seems, and I don't know if it's more on those, I don't want to call them mid-level bands, but they're bands that they tour around the US and so forth and maybe do light international touring, but they aren't a big name yet. They're not like signed to labels or anything, but I'm starting to notice that they do like this whole release, like here's our new song and here's like the merch line that goes with it. And it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of adopting what, you know, hip hop kind of has been doing with everyone having their own clothing brand and so forth. So it's been interesting to see the adopters who are kind of getting in on this. And, you know, I'm starting to kind of see the label system side of things kind of going that route too. But I don't know. It's an interesting time to be, you know, I'm in my mid-30s, so it's like seeing how much the industry has changed from when I was growing up as a kid, where, like I said, you know, it's like, oh, you get one single and I hope it's good enough to make you want to buy this full record for $20-$25. And now it's like, you know, you almost are back to what it used to be when the industry started way back in the, you know, 50s and so forth, where it's about singles and you're driving a single and it's not necessarily about an album thing because everyone can buy their music a la carte now.
Yeah. Have like a band or something and they're putting a record out and then half the record's already out by the time the album's out, you know, like yes. They've released 5 or 6 singles, you know, which I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, without being, you don't really want to blow your load, I guess. I hate that phrase, but you know, I hate that phrase. What it is if someone has a better way of saying that, let me know. But you don't want to like have a situation where you lose the excitement and you lose a lot of the intrigue of releasing a record. And I feel like a lot of pop, it works because you have I keep thinking of Billie Eilish and
yep,
it was just singles until her most recent record is, I think, her first one, right?
No, she had a record out before that. I don't remember it really spurning any like big critical singles or anything like that you would have heard on active top 40 radio, but it was still very much like kind of the album, the precursor obviously to what this record was, where I think they perfected kind of what they were trying to do on that first record. But I mean, I think it was maybe a year and a half between those releases. So it's not like it was, you know, she had been around in the underground for like 5 years or something.
Yeah, still like super young. But and she was still, when she started, was like super young anyway. But the idea being, or like a Drake, where you have, you know, they release like 5 songs that are off the record, or they release none of them. But it doesn't really matter because there's maybe like 20 songs on the record. Like, I feel like the scale of records in pop world is usually they have significantly more songs than like your typical metalcore band that's going to have maybe like 10 or 12 songs on a record. Like 13 at like the max. You see like a metalcore record with more than 13 songs, it's insane, you know?
Yeah, it's one of those, but like I said, that's the difference between just going to a producer, paying them for a beat or for basically a whole song in some instances, and all you got to do is put your vocals over it, and now boom, now you're done. It's like, it's not like having to get in a room with 5 other people and create everything from scratch and then perfect those over time and then, you know, get them on record and then go tour on it. Completely different industries, and it's really interesting to just see how completely different they are. Like, I love pop, rap, and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, metal is what I'm more known for. But I think just industry-wise, it's so interesting to see what everything's doing and how, like I said, you're starting to see these underground bands kind of adopting the hip-hop scene and culture of how they're doing stuff. I mean, Drake is a great example. I mean, that dude learned from Lil Wayne to basically just always be in the studio, say yes to seemingly every feature you get offered, so you're just always on the charts and you're constantly making your money from features. You got your clothing line. I mean, he dipped into alcohol. I don't know if he's still making it, but I mean, it's like he is so diverse with everything he does that if one thing isn't hitting, then that's okay. I got 9 other lanes I've created for myself, and it's more about a brand than it necessarily is about the music, even though the music is one part of that avenue of his brand. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like you're starting to see that more, you know, I mean, back in the early 2000s, every metalcore dude had a clothing line. And, you know, it was one of those things where you started seeing people trying to become more business oriented and kind of taking in what was going on in other musical landscapes. And I don't know, it's interesting now to kind of see it happening again in a completely different medium where, like I said, it seems to be more singles based. And then here's the clothing line for that single. I mean, Code Orange is doing it right now. Like, they're doing all these live streams and they're selling merch around the quote unquote live stream event that's specific to that. And I'm like, wow, that's so fucking wild to see, because that's not like, no one's doing that. And to have merch to be like, yeah, I watched the YouTube live version of this concert or whatever, this live stream, like that's fucking wild to me. And they're selling boatloads of these items because people want it, because it's a supply and demand of a rare thing and in a really weird, interesting time. And I don't know, I think that's kind of the interesting thing about doing these interviews sometimes, is talking to people about how they're traversing everything, because now you're a business. You basically have to pay attention to these things. And I know it all started because you like music, you like singing, you like playing with your friends, but now you have to become versed in marketing. You have to understand, you know, production budgets and all these other things that have nothing technically to do with making music, but you have to learn. And to me, it's interesting to see that I think that those that survive and have long careers are the ones that start realizing they have to know all these things and be more active in their own band outside of just the music part.
Yeah, the more you know, the more you thrive, really. And I feel like the Code Orange is a great example of that, where, yeah, it's genius, because it's something that maybe it's not particularly easy for them to go in there and make a live stream concert, but once the infrastructure is there for them to do that, then there you go, boom, now you're doing it. And then having merch on the side that you're selling specific to that event, also genius. Like, great. It's not super hard for you to go in and just make a pre-order of like a cool design for something and then send it out when it's ready to somebody, and there it is. That you have something there to offer people that is pretty safe bet for you and for the person who wants it. So that's super smart. So I didn't even know they were making like merch particular to this. That's crazy. But you have success in this world, or really anything that you really put your mind to, you just have to apply yourself and know what options there are for you, and it makes life so much easier.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know we're, as of right now, almost 2 months away, about a month away, roughly, because we're at the turn of from into May. But, so you got about a month before this record comes out officially, and who knows what we're going to be looking like as far as what's open, what's not open. But with, you know, everything kind of going the way it is, are you guys at least discussing maybe alternative plans to celebrate the release of this record if the stay-at-home ordinances and so forth are still in effect?
Yeah, it's a thing of we were going to release, and I feel like we're in a position where, enough people knew about it and we had it ready for so long that pushing it back would just seem like not genuine in our particular situation. And I don't judge people for like pushing back releases and all that stuff, because it makes sense. But for us, it just didn't make sense. And we definitely do want to make a plan to celebrate in some way. We're still trying to navigate this whole scenario just as everyone else is. And so we're going to just take our time with it and see what makes sense for us, and hopefully come up with something unique that works for everybody and makes our fans and listeners happy, and tides everyone over until we can finally get out there and these songs for everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just been, it sucks. I don't want these to be so heavy handed on, the situation we're in, but it's also one of those things. I feel like it's just so unprecedented, what it's done to the world, but I mean, to the industry. I mean, festivals and everything is just shut down, and I've never seen anything like it. So it's almost like you feel disingenuous to not at least talk about it a little bit. So at least you can almost have this for not nostalgia's sake, but for more of like a snapshot of the time we're in and how people were dealing with it. So it's just one of those where, I think it's breeding a lot of creativity, as you're seeing with Code Orange and some of these other people. And, a lot of bands started doing the empty arena or empty venue concerts shortly thereafter. People are getting more adventurous. I know Travis Scott just did a virtual concert, I think in Fortnite or something. So, I mean, you're starting to see interesting, clever ways that people are able to still experience quote unquote live music in a not live setting. So it's kind of interesting to see if this is going to change, the landscape of touring, even though that'll never be replaced by not going to a show physically. But, some people, as you get older or have kids and can't afford to go out to a show with babysitters and so forth, this might become a serious alternative option for some people. And it's interesting just to kind of think about what that may look like in the next year or two after this is all done.
A thing, I think it will be, definitely like another option for people who are not able to make it out to concerts and all that. I can see virtual concerts and live streams and live sessions being a much more prevalent thing, especially like going forward after this, because things happen and have it be of, quality to get out to people and have it be worth listening to. I think it's going to breed a lot more ingenuity, and it already has. Like, we already see it, like with everything we've been discussing today. But yeah, I could see things maybe being a blend of how it used to be and a little bit of some of the.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. I mean, this whole thing, like it did to a lot of people, but with me doing this whole thing couldn't have come at a worse time when I had so many festivals I was going to, interviews lined up, and it just kind of shot everything right in the ass. So I know it's exponentially worse for the touring industry, given the fact that's how you make your money. But all of that said, where can people find you or the band, and anything else maybe you want to plug that you have coming up? I don't know if you guys are doing much in the way of like Instagram live things or any of these kind of things, but I don't know, anything you would like to plug?
Yeah, so some of the first steps that we've taken, we are doing a weekly kind of newsletter. We haven't done that yet for the band for it on our website. That's currentsofficial.com, and you just go to the bottom of the page, and there's a little thing. You just put your email in there, and boom, you're getting our weekly updates. But and we're going to use that to kind of spread info on like live streams, interviews that go up, potential shows later down the road that'll hopefully, like just things. We're going to use it to kind of get information out to everybody. We are going to be doing something called Soundrink Live. It's going to be next Wednesday, I think at 8 p.m. I have to get like the official confirmation on that. But we are going to be doing that, and we're going to set it up so it'll be all 5 of us on like a little stream, and it's going to be on Twitch, YouTube Live, and I think Facebook all at the same time through like interface. And we'll have like a little link to our merch store and like a donation link. We're going to be donating to Music Cares and Hope for the Day. So, there'll be a little donate tab, or you could pick up like a t-shirt from us or something, really whatever you want to do. But it'll just kind of be like a chill sesh, answer some questions, hang out, I'll probably drink some beer. It'll be great.
Well, thanks again for taking the time to chat. Looking forward to hopefully everything happening and you guys being able to get on the road. Like you said, some of these songs are going to be bangers when you get to play them live, and be interesting to be in a room and see. I like watching crowds react to songs and so forth. I'm one of those that takes it all in. So definitely think there's some parts on here that have strong merch abilities to be anthems and slogans and stuff on shirts. So I'm excited to kind of just take in the whole show experience again, and looking forward to hearing these songs live whenever that happens and you guys are coming back around.
Yeah, for sure. I hope it's soon, man. We're all like, we're dying to get out there, but until then, we're just going to try to stay busy, and we'll keep everyone posted on what's going on. And I hope, everything goes well for you. I hope you stay safe and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You as well. Thank you for taking the time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was my conversation with Brian from Currents. You're going to hear Dan sound a lot better because we just got right into kind of current events, and Dan forgot to turn on his recording software. So
I did. That's all me. It's my bad.
So now Dan will sound a lot better in like he usually does. But after recording this, Dan had some internet technical difficulties and was not able to send me his track over. So Dan actually sounds the same. So it's not that we didn't do this correctly. We just figured that we were going to have the track. And now back to the way things were. Everything we were talking about was so sincere and kind of, from the heart, that we didn't want to go back through and redo it or try to redo it. That would feel a little bit disingenuous. So just kept the audio as you heard it. All of that said, this was kind of an interesting chat, and really kind of informed a little bit more of my conversations moving forward. Toward the end there, we were talking about the music industry kind of dealing with COVID and, how things are going to go, what bands are doing, whether they're going to push their record, back, whether they're going to do interesting things to kind of promote the album release date, whether it be a live stream or a live Q&A or whatever. And this carried over into my Instagram Live with Blasco from this past weekend as of when we're recording, and it's really interesting to hear and see who's paying attention to kind of what's going on. Blasco and I kind of basically were like, I think Suicide Silence has kind of won this whole how to traverse this. They're doing a quote unquote tour. I think it's 30 dates in 35 days, and what they're doing is basically staying in their practice space, doing a show, and then I think a live Q&A, but they're like geo-targeting it to specific markets, and you have to buy a ticket to go to it and all that kind of stuff. And then, when it's done, it's done. And then they're doing that for all the other cities and so forth. And I think it takes what Code Orange did, being one of the first bands to do the empty venue show and taking it to the next level, at least right now, for what bands are able to do currently. And something I have kind of stressed, and was kind of stressing in this toward the end of the chat with Brian, is just the ingenuity. I feel like that's kind of what this has been breeding, is bands who will probably stick around are thinking outside the box.
Yeah, absolutely. It's as if it wasn't hard enough to navigate the loss of physical album sales.
Physical venues now are gone.
Yeah, now venues are gone. You can't tour. You can't sell physical copies of things to people. And there's a minefield of current events and issues that have to be addressed.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's just been so interesting to talk to some of the bands and interviews that we've been doing. Even Dan kind of in the chat with Brock from 36 for Discuss Metal, him kind of talking through, what they're doing. Because, Brock has a radio show and he's talking to, their mayor every so often and kind of getting updates and just kind of hearing how everyone's trying to figure out what to do. Some people are taking the time to write new music. Some people are figuring out ways to interact with fans more one-on-one. Some people just aren't doing anything. And some people are going the opposite route. Like, you're starting to see like Ronnie Radke and Phil from All That Remains doing more video game streams and Twitch and stuff like that. And it's just been interesting to see I think who's willing to adapt and how they are willing to adapt to the current situation versus those that are like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah. That's. I mean, it's hard because, like, you know, this is just my personal opinion. I feel like it's wrong to not react, which is funny because I just spent the whole intro trying to justify not reacting. But I feel like it's wrong to not react. But I also think it's wrong to criticize if you do react. And so, yeah, these are hard. I mean, I think describing it as a minefield is pretty much the best way I can do it, because I do think that we all obviously want this change. You know, we all want to see, we don't want to see the world keep going on like it's going on.
No.
We don't want people being killed because of the color of their skin, and certainly not by authority figures. And it's kind of like in Captain America, though. It's kind of like a Hydra. You know, you can cut one head off of the Hydra, and when you cut it off, 3 more heads appear. You know, that's the hardest part about all of this is, you know, we're trying to change a corrupt system that's corrupt all the way down to its roots. And people criticize the methods that are happening. People are questioning the riots and all of that. But I mean, what else are you supposed to do? Going through official means isn't going to help if the official means are corrupt. So, I mean, I'm sorry if that's divisive for anybody, but that's just how I feel. Like, I just don't, the people that are just sitting on Facebook complaining about how horrible it is that personal property is destroyed. I feel like aren't really looking at the whole picture, and they're not understanding the whys of how we got here.
I mean, the biggest destruction of personal property, your fucking life.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so backwards, you know. These people that are complaining about getting haircuts, or complaining about not being able to get haircuts, and complaining about, you know, not being able to go to the bar after work and stuff, and, you know, sent protesters to their capitals with guns. Those people didn't get beaten. They were holding assault rifles. They weren't holding signs, or they were holding signs. But yeah. Can
I just tell you, like, as kind of fucked up as it is to say this, it's really shitty that a city like an hour from where I live is sort of what spurned a lot of this shit.
Yeah.
You know how, like, infuriating it is to be like, oh fuck, like we're the basis of a lot of this happened and no one fucking did anything. And the president lauded them for protesting and standing up for what they believe in. And then a matter of a week and a half, 2 weeks later, or however long it's been, because it's so hard to actually keep track of time during all this, it then is like, well, no, this protesting of people who are mad and outraged that this keeps happening for the last 30 fucking years, don't do that. And it's like, but they're also not bringing assault rifles and demanding shit. They are demanding shit, but they're not demanding it with, like, here's a gun that I shouldn't even fucking... Well, I'm not even open that can of worms. But regardless, it just sucks that it's like the thing that happened an hour or so away from me is what's been used as the model of, like, this was acceptable and now this is not deemed not acceptable. And it's just... It's a lot different, I feel like, for me here, because like I said, it feels like Michigan as a whole sort of has a larger role in a lot of what's been happening. And I don't know if that's just because how I feel about it. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't have happened somewhere else, but we were the catalyst, because a couple of days or a week later, other cities started doing it. And it's like, well, it's kind of monkey see, monkey do, like, nothing happened to them, so fuck it, we'll go do it too. And it's like, I hate the fact that we are the reason that those comparisons are being made.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to tell me. I mean, I'm from St. Louis, so I mean, you know, we had all of this go down in Ferguson in 2014,
right
here in St. Louis. Essentially, almost the same situation.
Yeah,
same protests, same, you know, and people said the same stuff there, like, oh, it's bad that somebody died. I mean, I actually think in a certain sense it was worse with the Michael Brown thing, because back then everybody was debating the validity of, was it murder? Was it murder? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. There were no witnesses. So, I mean, the only good that has come out of this more recent situation is we have it all on video. There's no way to misinterpret that video.
They're trying.
I know. I mean, people are trying because people suck. But like, black people have tried to solve these problems via traditional means for hundreds of years. The problem is whenever you go through official channels, the official channels hate you and they don't want to help you, and they don't perceive you as being a real person, and that's the corruption. I didn't mean to get this political, this weird about it, but it shouldn't be weird. It should not be weird to be talking about these things. I know it's a music podcast, but I mean, here we are. We have a channel, so it's one of those things where I feel like it just needs to be said that this is not some sort of perceived persecution. This is 100%. This is actual corruption. This is being fought. I'm sorry if it inconveniences you or ruins your day or makes you have to think about something, but these people are not out to inconvenience you. They're in a lot of cases they are literally just trying to fight for their rights to be Americans, to be free, and not have to be worried about getting shot because they were in the wrong place or suffocated while being hanged.
I think on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode. Go pick up the new Currents record. Again, The Way It Ends is out now via Sharptone Records. Go support them any way you can. If you would like to follow them across the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all Currents CT. If you would like to keep up with Brian, you can find him on Twitter and Instagram at his name, Brian Wille, Wille. At least I believe that's how you say his last name. Or keep up with everything over at currentsofficial.com. If you would like to keep up with Dan, he will tell you where he can be found.
Well, after that long speech, don't email me. No, you can email me at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. You can always send me a tweet at DiscussMetalDan. You can reach out to me on Facebook under Daniel Terry. I've got a bunch of other podcasts. Well, it's really mainly just two, Discuss Metal and Discography Discussion. Those can be found on discussmetal.com, and there's a really sweet one that we just posted with John featuring Brock Lindau of 36 Crazy Fist. Definitely not something to miss. I love it whenever somebody sits down and gives me the whole shebang, the whole history of the band. So check it out.
And if you would like to keep up with everything going on with this podcast, you can find us simply enough at BrewSpeakPod, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Hopefully we'll be rolling out with the website soon, BrewSpeakPod.com. Just putting the final touches on that. And if you would like to see some of the Instagram lives we've been doing, we have one that we just did as of when you're hearing this yesterday with Tyler Strotzel, who has a new EP coming out called Dark Verses. First single is out now with Bjorn from Soilwork. I don't know if he'll announce some of the other guests on there, so I'm not going to ruin that. And if you would like to support our sponsors during all of this, we have a few. I'm going to make it really short and simple. On Point Pomade, The Bean Bastard, Rockabilly.com. Look in the show notes. Everything that you need to know is there. Support them if you can. And we want to thank them for supporting us during all of this. And for the BREWtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
We'll talk to you all next time.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks, but you knew what you were getting into. It's your own fault. It will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.